Before we dive in, a quick note. If you want weekly tools to grow and lead your business, sign up for my free newsletter at stevepreda.com/newsletter. Good day, everyone. Steve Preda here with the Management Blueprint podcast. And today my guest is Courtney Berry, the president and co-founder of Bandits Friends, a full-service creative advertising agency that specializes in stealing attention for brands. Courtney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Well, you have to tell us first about the choice of brand. Bandits and Friends. I mean, Bandit is not typically something that people would want to start building trust with. But obviously, your brand is an award-winning one, so you must be doing something right.
That's right. Well, we're in the world of advertising. It's all about branding. And so we had to make sure that we had a good name to back it up. Our name, Bandits and Friends, is as much as an operating ethos as it is a name. Bandits, we steal attention on behalf of brands, and friends, that part of the equation, is how we refer to our clients. We actually try to never even use the word client in our agency because it puts a certain kind of them versus us type of mentality on the table. And so that's how we got to the name. We liked that it really infused the way that we operated as much as who we were at the end of the day.
Yeah, I like it. And how do clients react to being called friends? Do they take it as face value, or you choose clients that you feel like could fit, could become a friend? How do you do that?
That is a great question. One, when we started, we fully thought the bandits part of the equation was going to be the thing that potential clients really liked. They would understand that. That's exactly what they're going to an agency for. But what we have found is that it's the friends part of the equation that they have all sparked to so much more because, sometimes it is a very transactional relationship between clients and agencies, or sometimes there is a strong difference of opinion when it comes to certain things, and that can create tension between clients and agencies. And so when we talk about friendship, what we really mean is the basis of all of it is trust. We have to trust each other in terms of the brief being right. We have to trust each other in terms of having really honest conversations with one another to get to the real solution that we're all trying to get to. Friends don't waste each other's money at the end of the day. We don't want to waste our clients' money. We don't want them to waste our money. And also, friends are really looking for the best for each other. And so when we want the best for our clients and they also want the best for us, because a friendship, it really does go two ways. That is a really important component. And to the other thing that you said, not every client is a friend. Not every client really wants to play in that world of having a back and forth relationship and a give and a take. If that's not something that they're interested in, then really at the end of the day, they're probably not right for us and our agency culture.
Mm-hmm. It really resonates with me. I used to be kind of an agency owner. It was an investment banking firm.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever we had a friendly relationship with a client who really trusted our judgment and would let us lead and would not be receptive to divide and rule tactics from acquirers, then we could get so much more out of the transaction. We could negotiate harder because we knew that they had our back, and we could really push the envelope to get the best results for them. And if we didn't have that, then it was much harder.
It's so true. When you don't have that kind of trusting foundation, there is an element of fear. There's an element of fear that, they're not going to do good work for me, or they're going to overcharge me, or they're going to do a bait and switch. And so, yeah, you're exactly right. The same kind of philosophy and mentality in order to get to better work for them and to get to better outcomes.
Yeah, love it. So let me ask you, what is your personal why and how are you manifesting it in Bandits and Friends?
Yes. I had to think about this question a lot, Steve. And unfortunately, I don't really have a positive answer for this one. And I listened to, of your other podcasts and I thought, oh man, mine's a little bit of a Debbie Downer, but I guess it is what it is. I started Bandits and Friends because I was really frustrated by Two things. First, when I looked around the industry, there just weren't many examples of women in real power. In my last role before starting this agency, there wasn't a single woman in the C-suite of the holding company that I was working for. Not one. There weren't women who were making the biggest decisions. There weren't many examples of that career path that I was looking for. And so at some point, I realized I could either wait for someone else to really carve out that path, or I could be the one to help create it for myself and really help to create a lot of the opportunities that I wish I had seen overall. So that's the first one. And then the second one, and really I think manifests itself in an independent agency culture, is I was really fed up with the bureaucracy of everything. There was too much energy in our industry that was being spent on politics or approvals or process instead of the thing that makes our work happen, which are the people, the clients, and the work at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted to build a company that could move faster, trust people more, and focus on the things that actually matter, because what we're being paid for is to focus our time and energy on our clients' business and creativity. And so removing all the bureaucracy really helps to allow us to focus on that. So I guess to kind of sum up those two things, and really my personal why, is that I wanted to prove that there was a better way to build an agency to benefit other women who are coming up in this industry, and to really benefit the clients that I've dedicated my career to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Steve Jobs said, two functional business, marketing, innovation, and the two things are the same thing in some ways, because if you don't keep innovating in marketing, then you're not going to rob anyone's attention. And you have to remove the bureaucracy to be able to have a culture where people are creative. So
that's right.
I love it. That is very interesting. So tell me about this framework. So this is a podcast of frameworks. Maybe it's a little bit misworded in the description that it's a shortcut. It doesn't have to be a shortcut. So it's more of a mental model. It's a way of looking, simplifying the word, which allows you to do good work or to create, that bandit impact. So what's the framework that you could share with listeners?
Yeah. To your point, I think it's more of a mentality and approach versus steps that we take, because we don't work in a very linear business. Mm-hmm. Often things are running on a parallel path, but the way that I try to approach things, and which ultimately means the culture that we're trying to create at this agency, is removing friction to create momentum. Mm-hmm. Because if we are ever static, we are wasting our money, or we're wasting our clients' money, or, to your earlier point, it means that someone else is going to be able to steal attention before we can on behalf of the brands that we work for. So removing friction to create momentum. And there's kind of 5 different components that I've thought about for this. And the first one is, which seems so basic, but I think, a lot of times we get so excited by an opportunity that we forget to stop and say, are we choosing the right opportunity for us and what we can do for the brand? Because not every opportunity that comes to our desk deserves that momentum. Mm-hmm. When we first get an RFP or an RFI or some kind of pitch that's going to happen, we really ask ourselves 2 things. 1, can we make money? Sometimes in this business, you can't. The answer is no. And the other question that we ask ourselves is, can we make great creative? Mm-hmm. If neither one of those things is true, we move on, and that helps to prevent wasting energy and wasting time. And if we can't answer this, then we ask more questions of the prospective client. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, those clients can answer either one of those questions. And in those cases, we also move on. So the first step is really about choosing the right opportunities that we think deserve momentum and deserve the stealing of attention. Mm-hmm. The second point is clarity. I think that in order to be a great leader, you have to be decisive. You have to be someone who is willing to make decisions when no one else can, or no one else is really tasked to make those decisions. So we are all about creating clarity, because momentum really dies in a world of ambiguity. So we're asking ourselves, what are we solving for? Who is owning this? What does success look like? What is the budget? Don't ever leave a meeting without knowing next steps. And I think this is also a step where a lot of people skip it or maybe shortchange it, and then you're going to pay for it later.
Mm-hmm.
Third one is all around ownership. When you're kind of just starting out, you're just getting going. At the lowest level, people operate with the mindset of, I do what is assigned to me, right? And then managers, they get to that managerial level and they're all about managing on outcomes. I'm going to make sure this thing that is my responsibility is going to succeed. Ultimately, what we're trying to build are the highest operating types of people say, if I see a gap, I close it. It might be someone or, a gap where no one has assigned the task yet, or no one has even identified that it is a gap. No one owns the problem, but they see it, they own it, and they move it forward. So really trying to create that culture where we don't wait for permission to solve problems, and we don't wait for those problems to even be identified. And that's where we can really add value to our clients. Mm-hmm. We don't wait for that ownership. We just kind of assume that it's ours and we run with it. Mm-hmm. Fourth piece is protecting our point of view. And this is probably one of the most difficult. But as a creative agency, we really don't exist to execute instructions. We exist to bring judgment to a brief. Mm-hmm. We talk a lot about partnership and especially at Bandits and Friends, obviously friendship. But what that really means is that we're not adding value if we're simply taking instructions and just executing what's already known. The best agencies come in to provide perspective and for judgment. Because, every single time there's an opinion, in the room, if we surrender our point of view, we're no longer providing that value. If you think about it, the Apple 1984 commercial, right? That almost didn't air because Apple's board hated it. They wanted to pull it. They didn't want it to go anywhere. So if they had listened to every stakeholder concern, then arguably one of the best ads that a gazillion people are aware of would have never existed. It would have never aired. Mm-hmm. So that is a daily struggle and a daily debate for us. But, I can't even believe I'm going to say this on record, but in our business, the customer is not always right. And we have to make sure that we can defend why we believe that or why we think that there might be a better path forward for them to consider. And last but not least, honestly, it's about having fun. I think a big part for us is we have to build energy amongst both our employees and the clients that we're servicing instead of burnout. And that, again, it's not always easy, and it's not just necessarily a cultural thing. It is very behavioral in terms of the way that we do things, the way that we operate under stress, the way that we take feedback. But the work itself is hard enough already. And I've never seen people do their best work in a miserable state or a miserable environment. Again, that goes both to employees and clients. And when we do talk about our clients, we often talk about one of our goals being try to be the best part of their day and try to be the ones who we actually are going to have the best meeting that they've had that entire week. And if we only achieve that 50% of the time, at least it's 50% more fun than they would have had otherwise. So choosing the right opportunities, bringing clarity to what those opportunities are, empowering the ownership, protecting our point of view, and having some fun while we're doing it.
Wow. You really did a good job. I hope you won't send me a bill for coming up. But I resonate with that. And just to the last point, we are in the experience economy, right? They don't just want to buy a service. They want to buy an experience. They want to feel good about the process of why they are doing this ad or why they believe in this creative. And you want to energize them as well because they have to sell it ultimately. And if they don't believe in it and excited about it, then it's not going to work as well. I have the same view with my clients. I see them typically once a quarter, and I know that I have to show up. I have to recharge them so that they come out of this meeting and they feel like they want to tear apart the next quarter.
Yes, that's right. Otherwise, what separates you from someone else that can like tactically and executionally just do the exact same thing that anyone else can?
Or AI even. I mean,
Oh, 100%.
yeah, I think the emotional part is of our competitive advantage compared to AI.
Yes.
Love it. So Courtney, tell me, what drives growth in Bandits and Friends?
It's what I've been referring to, I guess, kind of throughout our whole conversation, which is, again, maybe on the surface level, a little oversimplified. But for us, the biggest driver of growth is trust. And again, it goes back to our philosophy of treating clients like friends, not just because it's a nice thing to say, but because trusted relationships are where the best work happens. And so that becomes the most scalable asset that we have. When you really think about it, being creative and creativity, which is the business that we're in, it's very vulnerable. And so you first need trust in order to create great work. And then great work creates more trust with the clients that you're working on. And then that trust that you have with them can lead to referrals, it can lead to recommendations, which is where a lot of our new business comes from. And then those create more opportunities. And we are in a people business at the end of the day. And so when we're having referrals that create opportunities, opportunities are attracting more talent. The talent that we have here wants to stay longer and they want to give more because they're working on fun and exciting opportunities and briefs and brands. And then you have talent who creates better work. And so it becomes this flywheel at the end of the day. And it is something that we really feel responsible for every time we're taking on a new friend at the agency is, do we feel like we have the right kind of chemistry to have trust with them in order to create that flywheel? Because our clients don't necessarily hire us because we're the cheapest. They don't necessarily hire us because we have the biggest team, but they hire us because they trust our judgment and they trust the way that we operate. And so once that exists, everything starts to open up and everything starts to move faster. And when you can move faster and get to more work and get that out into the world, that continues to open up more opportunities and more growth at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love that. Do you find that you have to lead with your own trust to get trust?
That is such a great question. Yes, I think that we have to prove that we are trusting that they're coming to us with all of the information that they can give us. I have to trust that they are being transparent and truthful about the budget that they're giving us. I have to trust that, to be honest, that this is a real opportunity that they're coming to us with that has been approved by all necessary parties. And it's something that's actually going to move forward and happen. And it's really hard to do when you're, picking up a call from somebody who you've never worked with before to automatically you have to assume good intent. And at least starting from that place of positivity, I think can help to then create that path towards the ongoing conversations, us proving that we have trust in everything that they're telling us so that then they return that same favor to us.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I get the criticism I'm too trusting of people. But it's a little bit like optimism. If you don't have optimism, then you have no positive vision to strive for. If you don't trust people, you have no chance to get their trust.
Right.
Maybe it's vulnerability. It's something to do with vulnerability.
Right. But you're totally right where, you definitely have to have those guardrails to the trust to make sure that your trust and your optimism isn't clouding your judgment at the end of the day. That is one of the hardest things I think that we have to do with new opportunities because you're making a lot of assumptions. And sometimes those assumptions are stated and sometimes they're not. And you just got to roll with it. And, obviously you win some, you lose some, but hopefully the more that we're doing it, the more that it becomes that positive net effect.
Yeah. So, Courtney, what is something that you're actively trying to figure out in your business?
Well, I won't talk about AI because I feel like everyone's talking about AI, but that is definitely an obvious answer in terms of operationally, are we using all of the best tools that are out there? Are we staying compliant with, our agency agreements and client agreements when we are introducing some of those new AI tools? And then, of course, in the world of creativity, everybody's really questioning how much should we be using AI in final assets versus the human part of things. And I think from our perspective, right now, we're just interested in exploring. We're interested in understanding how can things continue to help us remove friction from a process in order to get to those fast moving flywheels that we want everyone at the agency to be operating on, but also how do we make sure that we're continuing to bring craft and fidelity to all of the campaigns that we are working on. So AI is a very obvious one. I think the other thing for us in terms of what we're really actively trying to figure out at the agency is, of course, scaling. The more that we're trying to grow, the more that we're trying to scale, the processes and behaviors that you have as a young agency can be quite different than a more mature agency of several hundred people. Mm-hmm. And so what we are trying to instill is making sure that the behaviors and the processes that we're creating and adopting now are scalable for the future, which is, sometimes that's an easy thing to figure out. And other times it's a little bit more of something that we have to evaluate and really take into consideration because, for example, things like timesheets, that is not something that we care to do at an independent agency. One, we think that they are wildly inaccurate. As somebody who used to work at a bunch of holding companies, and my Wi-Fi would be turned off if I didn't, enter my timesheets within a certain amount of time. But I think they're wildly inaccurate. We are not lawyers. We're not accountants. We don't turn our brains off by the hour. We're constantly thinking about the briefs that we have. And I've been challenged multiple times on, is that a scalable behavior and process for the future? When, in the future, when you're several hundred people, you're going to want to know exactly how much time so-and-so spent on which project. And I just don't think it's necessary for us. I think that there's a level of organization that we can bring to the way that we operate that something like a timesheet is going to be obsolete for our future. But it really all comes down to how do we scale and how are we making the right choices every single day to support that scale and that growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is fascinating. And, Peter Drucker, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Some people say that the most enduring professional service businesses build a unique culture, and that is their competitive advantage. So they are scaling the culture rather than the frameworks or the processes or whatever else they have. So that's a fascinating thing. As an agency co-founder, what would your advice be to maybe other professionals, maybe Madison Avenue or wherever they are working in a professional service, some kind of a leadership position, and they are thinking about breaking out and do their own thing? What's one thing that you would advise them that maybe wasn't obvious to you when you got started?
I think one, in terms of if people are really thinking about it and they're weighing the pros and the cons, if you're not willing to take a bet on yourself, then that is a larger conceptual, philosophical, conversation that you need to have with yourself. I think at the end of the day, that's one of the ultimate things that kind of pushed me forward to start this agency is I wanted to take a bet on myself. I felt like, I had proven myself in a number of different opportunities and roles that I was ready for it. And, if it failed, it failed. Then, all right, that's a problem for another day, ultimately. And then honestly, on a very tactical level, I think today's world and the way that we operate in a remote sense and a very fractional sense has been one of the most helpful things for us as an agency. And I didn't know the world of fractional bookkeeping, fractional CFO, fractional benefits and payroll providers, fractional HR. And that is something that creates so much back office power for us and is so important in terms of making sure that, again, we have behaviors and processes that can scale where we don't necessarily have to have all of those employees from an overhead standpoint. And that has been something that has truly been eye-opening for me in terms of the world that exists outside of hiring full-time employees and this kind of ecosystem that's there that many people can tap into in order to really have that firepower to show up in a very legitimate, incredible way.
Wow. Okay, that's great. You're running a remote business. You have fractional people. You're leveraging AI without hurting the creativity. Hopefully, that's a model for the 2020s or 2030s potentially. Fantastic. So, if someone maybe they are yearning for this kind of creative juice that your team is bringing, and they have a product that they want to rob some attention for, or a service, where can they learn more about Bandits and Friends, and where can they connect you?
Sure. Well, anyone can go to our website at banditsandfriends.com, or they can email us at hifriend@banditsandfriends.com. And we'd love to have a conversation with anyone who is ready to steal attention and operate in that mindset and philosophy of trust and friendship in order to get to the best ideas that are really going to help drive business results.
All right. Well, if you want to befriend Courtney and her friends at Bandits and Friends, then reach out to her. So, Courtney Berry, president, co-founder of Bandits and Friends, thanks for coming and sharing your unique ideas with us. And if you enjoyed listening, stay tuned to our YouTube channel and follow us and give us a review. Thanks for coming and thanks for listening. That's it for this episode. Keep moving your business forward. Subscribe at stevebreda.com/newsletter.